their relationship because getting a call. And it is this really special orphanage. It's this really special orphanage. Why can't I say that? So I recently started The Other Me by Sarah Zacharick Jang. And I kind of just picked this up on a whim. I got it as a library hold in, and so I don't really know what to expect. I don't think I've heard people talk about this anywhere, but I was really intrigued by the kind of plot of this book. I believe this is categorized as a sci-fi, and it feels a bit like a thriller, but basically it's about this girl who is on her birthday. She is supposed to be going out with some friends and just hanging out, and she walks through a door and suddenly she is in a different situation because she walks through this door and she is at her own anniversary party with this man who she knew back in high school, but she doesn't remember having a life with. And so basically she's in this new version of her life, and in this new version of her life things are just really different, but she actually has memories of like everything that's happened in this new version. And so now she's kind of trying to figure out how she got here and how, like, if she can get back to her old life. And it's also like time has passed because she's older now, and again, like, she's married, she's at her anniversary, and she's with a guy that she knew back in high school but she hasn't talked to in a long time, and like things are really different. And so her husband Eric is like, she really wants to trust him, and she remembers, you know, how they got together and how much she loves him and things like that, but there's just something really mysterious with him and his job, apparently. So I mean, I haven't gotten to that part of the book yet, but apparently that's gonna happen. And so I just think it's really interesting about like seeing this person have like two kind of lives, and it's not really time travel. It feels more like an alternate reality situation, but I just think that whole concept is really cool. And so far I'm about like, I think like chapter 5 or something. I'm at page 33, so not really far, but it's been really interesting, where basically she has entered this new life and she is just slowly trying to figure out what's actually happening. Like, she's pretty much in shock still, and she hasn't told anyone because, I mean, obviously nobody would really believe her or understand. But yeah, I just, so far it's been really interesting, and I have been meaning to like read more sci-fi, and I mean, I think this is categorized as sci-fi, but yeah, so far it's been really interesting, and I'm very intrigued to see where the story is gonna go. Hey guys, so I wanted to update you on what I've been reading. So I am still in the middle of The Other Me. This is a basically science fiction book dealing with like an alternate reality, and I really did like it when I first started it. However, I'm about like a third of the way through, and I'm not loving it as much as I thought I might love it when I started it. So I did kind of put a hold on this, and I've picked up a couple other books that I'm actually really excited to talk about. So let me let you know what else I've been reading. So I actually started 2 other books. First one being Delilah Green Doesn't Care by I totally forgot the author's name, but I'll have the picture up here. And this is a new release 2022, and it is a adult romance book. It has a sapphic relationship, and I'm actually really enjoying this one. I'm about like 50% of the way through, and this is basically about a woman whose father died when she was really young, and her father remarried right before he died, and so she ends up being, her guardian ends up being the woman who her father married, and she doesn't really have a good relationship with this woman. And then she also has a stepsister who she pretty much grew up with, but you know, they really didn't get along, and so all of her life she's kind of felt like an outsider and like she doesn't belong, and her stepsister is like really popular. They also grew up in this really small town, and so I believe when she turns 18 she leaves home, moves to New York, and they were in, I believe, Portland or like Oregon, somewhere on the West Coast. And so she goes to New York to become a photographer, and she pretty much never goes home. But now her stepsister is getting married, and her stepmother basically kind of forced her to come back home and be the wedding photographer, and she is paying her and everything. And so now she's home in the first time in like 5 years, and she ends up coming back, and she runs into her stepsister's best friend Claire, who is also dealing with a lot. She became a mother when she was really young, and she is now basically a single mother because her ex is really in and out of the picture. He's pretty much like an absent father, but he's suddenly come back because he wants to be a part of his daughter's life more. So Claire's kind of dealing with that. But Delilah, our main character, comes back for this wedding, for stepsister's wedding, and her and Claire, you know, there's kind of some sparks flying there. And Claire is kind of ready to explore dating again, and Delilah has been through a really bad breakup, kind of like, I think like 5 years ago, but she's still reeling from it. So she's not necessarily in a great place. So when she and her stepsister meet again, there is a lot of tension there because they don't necessarily like each other. And so Delilah ends up sort of creating this challenge where she tells her sister that, you know, I can get with Claire, and you know, she's gonna want me and everything. And her stepsister is very much against this because she doesn't want her friends anywhere near her stepsister because she doesn't like her. So now this is so it's the romance between Claire and Delilah. And I have to say, I do really like the story, and I like I definitely like, first of all, the integration of like the family dynamics as well as the romance. So in terms of like the family, we have Delilah dealing with her stepsister and her stepmother, and there's actually like a lot of baggage and trauma that she has with these people, and then also like her stepsister has with her. And so I really like seeing that stuff, and I'm really, you know, hoping that we get to some growth and development and like a better conclusion at the end of the book for them as a family. And then in terms of the romance, I definitely really like these two characters separately, and I do like kind of how things are moving along. My only problem is honestly like the way, I guess, the romance is set up, because of just this whole challenge aspect. Like, it seems like Delilah is kind of really only going for Claire because it's kind of like this challenge to her, and she wants to kind of rub it in her stepsister's face that I can get with your best friend. And so don't really love that, I will say. But I'm hoping, like, I mean, slowly she's actually developing feelings, and, you know, things aren't just about rubbing it in her sister's face. So I'm hoping for it to get better. And I mean, not to say like I do still like the romance, but I just don't necessarily love that aspect of it. But yeah, I'm 50% of the way through with this one, so I'm definitely gonna finish this one soon. And so far it's been pretty good. And the other book I'm reading is, I am ready to, you know, shout from the rooftops about how much I love this book, and I am less than 50% of the way through it, but that is The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. So this has been a really popular book for a really long time, and for some reason, I just was never super interested in reading it. And, you know, I've heard so many people talk about how much they love it, so it's not necessarily because, I mean, I really don't know why I didn't want to read it, but I am kicking myself for that because I like really need to get on this because I absolutely love this book. This book is so good, and it's so it just warms your heart, you know, like it's just so beautiful, and it's so heartwarming, and it's so so good. Basically what this book is about is it's a fantasy book where we're following this we're in this kind of Orwellian society where the government and like the people in charge are very, you know, nitpicky about everything, and they want the citizens to kind of do what is asked of them, I guess. And our main character, Linus Baker, is this 40-year-old guy who is a bit of a loner, you know, doesn't really have a lot of friends, and pretty much just work is his life and his cat. And so he works for this company, I guess, where they are supposed to go into these orphanages and kind of check on things and like make sure everything's okay. And, you know, Linus is this caseworker, and so he just goes to these orphanages when he's asked, and he writes his case report and he leaves. And he never really stops to question or to think about what is actually happening to those kids he's kind of leaving behind. And so he ends up, because he's like a stickler for the rules and, you know, always does what's asked of him, he ends up getting called by, like, I think they call it extremely upper management. So he gets called by them and he is sent on this very special case where he has to go to the orphanage, which is in the middle of this beautiful sea and is kind of far away, but he has to go there. And it is this really special orphanage which has these really peculiar people on it. And these children in this orphanage all have like really kind of dangerous and kind of like weird abilities that supposedly make them a threat to society. So they've kind of been sequestered away from society and they're in this one place. So now Linus has to go there and basically write a case report on what is actually going down in this orphanage. And he has to be like completely honest and, you know, say things as they are, and he has to send these reports back to extremely upper management to basically decide if this orphanage is safe for these kids and safe for society, and the guy running the place, is he like fit to do it? And so the person running the place is Arthur. And Arthur is this really sweet guy, and you can clearly tell he wants the best for the children, and he is really like protective of them. And so when Linus comes in, not only is it a shock when he meets all of the children at the orphanage, but he's really like getting his eyes open to a different part of the world and like different people, and that's like the main premise. Now talking about the actual children on this orphanage, they are some of the best characters I've ever read. They are so fun, so unique, so different. And just to give you a little hint, one of the characters is supposedly Lucy. Lucy stands for Lucifer. He is the Antichrist. He is the son of Lucifer and, you know, supposedly the devil. And so people are definitely really scared of him. But so he's one of the kids. And then we also have this girl named Talia, who is this gnome. And then we have Chauncey, who is basically this like blob of like, I don't even know how to explain it. He's just a blob, and he's one of my favorites for sure. And I'm forgetting the rest, but there is Fee, who is basically this like I guess like a monster, some people would say, but like we don't think that, you know, because she is just a little kid and we love her. But I think they call them sprites. So they're just like these winged creatures. And there is Sal. Sal is this he's basically like a shapeshifter, and he can turn into a dog. And so I believe that's all of the children, but they're just all so precious, and I love them all. And you know, Lucy, Chauncey, Talia, like they're some of my favorites because they're just so innocent and cute, but like, oh, you just want to like wrap them up in a hug and like love them. And basically, you know, as Linus spends more time with these people and, you know, these kids, and he sees that they are not what they seem, and they're not what society has kind of told them that they have to be. Like Lucy, for example, you know, society sees him as this really scary, dangerous thing, but he himself is just a little kid, and like he just wants people to love him and accept him. And that goes for all of the children. So this book is really giving me like Doom Patrol vibes, or like just like, you know, this band of misfits, these outcasts that society has deemed dangerous or unlovable and all of these things. And, you know, they're in this space together, and their warden, I guess, is Arthur. And Arthur just loves them with all of his heart, and he wants the best for them. And again, like Linus comes in and he's seeing all of this, and I feel like slowly we're seeing that, you know, despite him being, again, like a stickler for the rules, and he does everything by his rule book, and, you know, he really doesn't like going off script or anything. But as he spends more time with these people, he really realizes that, you know, you can't judge a book by their cover, and you have to accept people and love people. And I just love it. So I think definitely TJ Klune's like mission with the story is to like spread kindness and acceptance and not judge people based on, you know, external factors or things that they should be, or, you know, how society sees them, but, you know, who they are on the inside. And so I love that message. I love the theme, and I really love this book. I'm so excited to see what happens in the rest of the book. I'm at the point that I'm at, you know, we're still seeing Linus on this island, and he, I think, has like 2 more weeks that he has to spend on this island. But yeah, the more that you see him spend time with these people, the more that he himself, I think, is like falling in love with them and like realizing that they're just all so much more than they seem. And then also there is definitely a sort of like love story going on between Arthur and Linus, and I'm here for it. It is so cute. There is just so much to love about it, and it's like nothing overt yet, at least, but it's just like the little things, like little like touches or stares or things that like Linus has been thinking and saying, and I really love that. And lastly, I want to touch on like, I guess like sort of a controversy that surrounds this book and TJ Klune, the author. Basically, it was, he in an interview said that he got some like inspiration from the I believe it's called the 60s Scoop, where basically this is mainly in Canada, but I believe in like America it happens too. But basically the government was taking Indigenous children from their homes and putting them in residential schools and basically forcing them to like erase their identity, their culture, their language, and assimilate to like being Western or like European and all of that. And it was a really traumatic situation. And as a Canadian, I definitely learned a lot about this in school. And, you know, there's just so many horrible, like devastating stories of what these actual children had to go through. And this isn't even like a really old situation. Like it's the 60s Scoop, but there's, I believe the last residential school in Canada at least shut down in like the 1990s, like 1998 or something. It hasn't ended for a long time in history or something like that. You know, it's a pretty recent situation. And so basically, TJ Klune sort of got some inspiration from this event he was reading about. And I, as not an Indigenous person, like can't really have a legit opinion on this. But based on what I'm seeing and based on, I like definitely tried to do some research and listen to Indigenous voices and what they were saying about this book, as well as just like the author and like his intentions. And I definitely think where there's a difference between like co-opting trauma and appropriating culture in like that situation versus kind of getting inspiration and bringing something to light. And I think, you know, of course, if Indigenous people have a problem with this book and with this author, then, you know, you cannot hold it against them because that's their view. But at the same time, I do think that the author, you know, is coming from a good place. And what he really wanted to do was write a book that was talking about acceptance and about healing and about love and kindness. And I think with this story specifically, he is accomplishing that. And I think, you know, despite getting inspiration but from a traumatic event, he hasn't, at least from what I've read, he hasn't used it in a way to, I guess, like co-opt that trauma. He hasn't used it to just push a plot or something like that. So I think like what he's trying to do, he's done in a respectful way. And yeah, like I'm saying, like for sure it's not my opinion that matters, but just based on like what I'm seeing. So that's really all I wanted to say, but you know, there is definitely controversy around this, so I just want to touch on that. And you know, I'm hoping that the author, like TJ Klune, is listening to the people whose voices matter, like Indigenous people, and he's listening to the criticisms and complaints, and you know, at least is learning from that. And hopefully, you know, he's coming from a good place and his motives are well intentioned. So, you know, that's what matters. But overall, I mean, so far, almost 50% of the way through, and I really do love the story. And I love the characters, I love the writing, I love the world, and honestly, this is definitely going to be one of my favorites of the year. Like, I can already tell. Honestly, like, the first few chapters, I could already tell, you know, 5 stars, this is going to be great. So yeah, I'm really excited to see how it ends, and I will let you know once I have finished this book. Hey guys, so I finished reading The Other Me last night, and this was the book that I basically had a really like roller coaster ride with, because when I started it, it was really interesting and really intriguing, but then about after 20% I got pretty bored, and so I had set it aside for a while, and then I finally picked it up again, and then I kind of like pushed myself to get through the next 20 to 30%, and once I hit 50% and like things started moving along and the plot started thickening and things started happening, it was like so hard to put this book down because it just got really interesting. And I feel like this book was kind of took me by surprise because, again, like at the start I was not expecting much because it was just kind of boring me, but then by the end of it I actually ended up really liking this book. So now I'm not sure if I want to give it like 3 stars or 4 stars, so it's maybe a little in between, so 3.5. But I mean, given where it started, and I was thinking like this is gonna be like 2 stars, max 3 stars, you know, almost being close to a 4 stars. I mean, honestly, with how much I liked it and like the sort of twist that it took, I might actually give it 4 stars. I think I will. Without giving anything away, I think what really made this book interesting is the sort of spin on what actually happened to her. So, I mean, I don't know if this is a spoiler, so I might just put up a little spoiler card just in case, but this book does involve time travel, and that's sort of how the whole alternate reality situation happens. And so I think this book did a really, I guess like a bit of a different take on time travel. Like that whole time traveling is obviously, like in media, it's a very people can just do kind of whatever they want with it because there are no rules really. But I mean, the time travel that I am aware of, I guess, like the rules of time travel is like basically through superhero stuff, so like the Flash and everything. And this book I think did do a bit of a different take on it, and it also had a lot of interesting conversations about like free will and choice, and sort of like, you know, kind of like the butterfly effect, where like if you make one different choice in your life, how all of the rest of your life will play out and how that can be different. And so I don't know, I think I really do like alternate reality stories because it was really interesting. So yeah, I think I've like hyped myself up to give this 4 stars. So overall, a really interesting book and a bit of a surprise.
I don't want no scrub. A scrub is the guy that can't get no love from me. Hanging out the passenger side of his best friend's ride, trying to holler at me. I don't want no scrub. A scrub is the guy that can't get no love from me. Hanging out the passenger side of his best friend's ride, trying to holler at me.
So I have finally finished Delilah Green Doesn't Care by, I always forget this author's name, but the picture's here. And okay, so this was a book. It was a book, yes. This is an adult romance book, and it has a sapphic relationship, and I think I've already talked about what this book's about and everything. But I will say it has been many days later, and I have finally finished this book. And I mean, nothing against the book itself, but I feel like, especially in the middle, I got really bored and I just wasn't feeling like picking it up. And so it took me a really long time to get through it. And that's something, like, not to say it's a bad book, because it's not. It's actually like, you know, it has a cute romance. It has other parts of the book that outside of the romance that makes it still interesting. But just for some reason, I just really wasn't into it in the middle. And so I definitely found myself kind of like scrolling through and just kind of like speed reading, I guess. But basically, I will say that in terms of the romance, I think I did talk about it before, but basically the way the romance started is kind of on this like bet or challenge thing between 2 characters. And only like, so between the main character and her sister, because the main character is like, I bet I can get with your friend, and she's really only doing this to annoy her sister. And so I didn't really love the premise of like how these 2 characters started, like the romantic relationship kind of came about. But once they got into the whole romantic aspect of the relationship, I think, you know, the bet part wasn't a part of that, and like that did come to cause problems later on. But overall, I think the romance part was okay. I think my main problem though was just that it never really felt super like there wasn't like a whole bunch of chemistry in my opinion. Like, I think some parts were just a little boring, and even when they got together and, you know, stuff was happening, like I just never was super into the relationship. And then the other side of things was basically the main character and her stepsister and their relationship, because getting a call. So we had the main character and her stepsister and their kind of antagonistic relationship because they didn't really get along in their childhood, and there's a lot of like kind of problems between them. And so I did enjoy seeing their relationship and kind of them working through their problems and becoming more sisterly towards the end. And I think that was the part of the book that I was like more into, I guess, more than the romance, which I feel like in a romance book is a problem. But I did get back into things towards the end, and I think the ending was really good. Also the other romantic interest is a single mother, and so she was dealing with a lot with her ex-husband and like her child and things. And I mean, another problem though I think was that the main character, Delilah Green, was really like fun to read from, and like I liked her personality and character. But unfortunately, the other main character, Claire, who was the love interest, I didn't really love her character, and I feel like she was pretty one note, even though she had like a lot of things going on, like I just said, like her child and being a single mother and all of that. But I just feel like as a character, she just wasn't as interesting, so it made kind of the dynamic not as interesting. All that to say though, I think I'm gonna give this 3 stars, maybe 2.5, but for sure on Goodreads I'm giving it 3 stars. And I mean, it is a really good book, and I do think, like I always say this, but I'm really hard to please when it comes to romance books, because I feel like there's just specific things and tropes that I really like, and then everything else kind of falls flat for me. But yeah, 3 stars feels good.